Before we get started here on Inside Saluki Athletics, presented by Poly Eyes of Carbondale today, we want to take a moment to honor SIU Hall of Famer Richard Itchy Jones, who passed away Monday at the age of 87. Itchy coached 39 years at the collegiate level, of course being at Southern Illinois from 1970 to 1990, and his college career at Illinois, coaching there in 1991 to 2005. And he retired as one of college baseball's top 20 weighing-in coaches. Even today, 15 years after his retirement, Itchy Jones ranks 27th in NCAA history all-time with a record of 1,242 wins and only 752 losses and 6 ties. Before we get into our show, I'd like to take a moment of silence in honor of Itchy Jones.
Inside Saluki Athletics, presented by Poly Eyes of Carbondale, the official coaches show of Saluki Athletics. Now, here is the voice of the Salukis, Luke Martin.
Welcome back, everybody, to another episode of Inside Saluki Athletics, presented by our friends at Poly Eyes of Carbondale. To kick off the show this week, we got to bring in the big guns. You know, not that Coach Nagy isn't the ultimate big gun here on the basketball program. But Tate Gibbs joins us, assistant coach for the Dogs. Coach Gibbs, appreciate the time, brother. How's life with the family? I know newborn, no longer really a newborn, starting to keep getting older.
Yeah, he's getting older. 9 months.
Wow.
It's been great. It's been great. It's a transition for me, you know, going from coaching to now parenthood. But I love it. I really love it.
Well, you already saw the Eagles win a Super Bowl.
Oh yeah.
So I saw that was pretty special to Gibbs' household,
you know,
wasn't it?
I had to wait until age 26, 27. He had to wait 9 months for that. So life's not fair.
You got to tell him it's not always going to be this easy,
No,
right?
no.
Even though that'd be great if it did.
Oh,
There'd be
man.
some good moments for Papa Gibbs too.
For sure.
Coach, I know we have really described on the radio side for us your role this year and how a little bit has evolved as it's gone throughout the year. You've always been involved, but the last couple of weeks, really the last month, been kind of taking more of the OC approach, the offensive coordinator for the team. How's that adjustment been for you now?
It's been a big adjustment, but it's something that I really enjoy. But I also think, you know, we've seen a huge difference, you know, from the offensive perspective and defensive perspective as well, since around like that first Belmont game. It's been a lot of work, a lot of film sessions, just a lot of just reflection as well, just from where we were game one to where we are now. But it's always room for improvement.
During games, where do you see your eyes at mostly? I know everybody wants to watch the ball, and I'm sure on offense that's probably an area where you are, but are there other areas that you try to put your eyes that can maybe help the staff, Coach Nagy, and also help yourself out in terms of where you want to go offensively in the game?
For me, it's always seeing how, like, they're guarding our sets, how they're guarding ball screens. Are they switching? Are they switching off the ball? Are they pressuring? And they may also guard different individuals, you know, different as well. So for me, it's, you know, seeing what they're doing, you know, possession after possession, calling the play, seeing if that set work. If it works, you know, circle it. You know, we may use it towards the end of the game as well. But it's also, like I said, just focusing on their defense and also seeing what works for us.
Where do you believe this group, from an offensive standpoint, has grown the most in the last month?
It's confidence, and I think you can see it from the percentage-wise, from shooting from the three. Just percentages, just overall. I know we were getting around the most shots in the Valley at the rim, but really wasn't, you know, converting those makes to, those shots to makes. And if you look at it from, like I said, since that Belmont game, and just overall how we're shooting the three the past 3 to 4 games, it's been huge in the confidence-wise for those guys.
The passing ability of this group at times, it's been an area where I think this group is very unselfish. They want to share the ball. But even we have Jorge coming up on the show. I think his passing ability has really been on display the last couple of weeks. Drew has always had a really good assist-to-turnover ratio. Where has this group gotten better in terms of not just making shots? I know when you make shots, the assist numbers do go up. But I think there's a part where the passing has improved over the last month.
It's trusting your teammates, but also trusting the staff that we're putting you in the right positions. These guys are unselfish now. You know, they're making the extra pass. You know, I think early on we were trying to do a lot of one-on-one, but guys are making the extra pass. Guys are making the correct cuts. A lot of that come from repetition at practice. But the biggest thing, like I mentioned, is trust for me, that I'm putting you in the right position, but also trusting your teammates to make the shot.
We have seen, I'm trying to remember all the situations, but I know specifically in each of the last 2 games, Drew has been able to drive baseline, and then Ollie makes a
D-Wade
basket cut in
yeah.
and just right there at the rim. We've seen Mayo being a really good a really good cutter on this group. I know you guys have really missed him the last couple games, but the cutting ability, Coach Gibbs, I mean, I know you guys preach it every day, and you go through so many drills to try to really emphasize the cuts. Where's this group gotten better in that regard?
Oh, I think they're just it's a tremendous, just improvement just from game 1 to now. And like you mentioned, it's a lot of just repetition and practice, but also it's a lot of showing these guys during film session when it's the right time to cut as well. And I think our guys have done a great job from taking the film to practice to putting it into the game situation.
Look, I know the second half obviously was very disappointing against Belmont over the weekend, but let's talk about the first half, what got you guys out to that lead. One of the areas was your 2-point percentage was extremely high. It's because of the shots you created in that first half. When things are going right, Coach Gibbs, what's a commonality offensively of whether it's you guys reverse the ball, whether it's getting a paint touch? What do you find as, man, if we can check these boxes? I know there's not necessarily a ton of rules that you have, but when you say when we hit these things, man, our offense is a different level.
Like you mentioned, we talk about the TFZ, the 10-foot zone. We want that ball to get in the 10-foot zone, but for us, our biggest advantage is pace. If we can play with great pace, I think offensively we're really hard to guard. Getting Moo Kennard downhill, as a 6'4", 6'5" point guard, him coming at full head of steam, it's hard to stop. Ali's, I tell him every day at practice, you're the fastest guy that I've coached, and when he's coming a full head of steam just downhill, I just really think we're hard to guard. And, teams do try to pack it in, but if we're going full speed and making an extra pass, our offense is pretty good.
When things do flip like they do on Saturday, it's very easy to get frustrated in the game. I think the body language showed it. What can that experience do for this group in terms of building off of it?
We got to take every game, win or a loss, and just learn from it. We just learn from the loss, learn from the mistakes that we make, but also learn from the things that we've done well, like continue to do it well. And I think our last game we had just revert back to the beginning of how things were, like, shots are not falling, let's try to go one-on-one. But that was for me to take that film and show the guys, like, this is what we need to do when things are going wrong. Just trust the offense, trust what we've done, and don't just revert back to the individual one-on-one. Just believe that the things that were working, will work again.
Look, give credit. Belmont did a great job in that second half, and, there's always a 50% equation to your guys' games. It's not all because of what you guys are doing or vice versa. But how much, in terms of what the conversation was like at halftime to then the start of the second half, how much was that a little bit of a surprise? Because from just talking, they forgot the locker room was really good at halftime.
Locker room was great. Usually I think we were 10-0 going into, halftime with the lead.
Only La Tech was the one that you guys didn't hold, but every other well you have.
But, for us, that was really not a situation that we've been in, this year where we had a lead that big at half and guys started a run that big. But like I said, for us, it's a learning experience. I'd rather go through that now, learn from it, and then instead of it hitting us in a few weeks.
No doubt. Yeah. One of the other guys too, Coach Gibbs, and we'll get to Jorge in a moment because he's on the show. But I thought, man, you look at the first 20 minutes against Belmont, that's Davion Sykes, one of the best 20 minutes, one of the best halves that he has played. And it's because almost every loose ball, he was there.
Yeah.
How much of that is when you go to film this week, when you get time to meet with Davion, it's like, dude, like when you do this, when you're flying around, like nobody wants to see that because of your makeup.
I've always mentioned to him, just from his size, from his physical aspect, he's a matchup nightmare. But what he could also bring to the table is like you said, that the effort plays, diving on the floor, being a great defender, rebounding, and he's one of the few forwards that we have that can rebound and push it, with the ball in his hands. So he puts pressure on the defense from being a 4-man that could rebound and take it up the court and make, he's a great decision maker, great passer. But those extra, things like you mentioned, diving on the floor could also just help us as a team. We always preach about, not offense, it's the small other intangibles, such as diving on the floor, just the communication piece, the extra effort plays, those would be huge and really huge for him.
Look, you miss Damian Mayo all the time, but when we were watching what Sykes was doing in the first half, like, you kind of forgot that you didn't have Mayo, and that's why I'm sure it's very important for you guys as a staff to show those guys, like, look, man, like, we're going to get that guy back eventually, but, like, others, like, you guys can feed each other as well.
100%. And what Mayo brings to the table, you know, some may say that's not a skill, playing hard. I believe that's a skill, because if you can bring that type of energy every single day, that's hard as a human nature. You know, some days you may want to take that day off, but Mayo brings it every single day, and I believe that's a skill that's hard to teach.
How is he, even though he's been out, there are so many times within the game, and it's fortunate when I sit next to the bench, you're able to see it. He's up coaching, talking, guys come in and out. He's always one of the ones that are there. He's checking with Coach Hawk to check the defensive calls to really, like, even though he's been out, how is he still really kind of doing whatever he can to help this team?
He's all in. He's asking me the plays. He's asking Coach Hawk what defense we're in. And the biggest thing with Mayo is he wants to win. You know, he wants to win above everything else. If he's on the court, if he's off the court, his thing is let's win a championship. And that's one of the biggest things that he brings to this team is the competitive nature. You know, he wants to dominate. He wants to win. All of that is very important to him. His stats can be 0, 0, 0, but for him, as long as he gave it his all, he's satisfied. He wants that W right beside that score.
Thing is, Coach Gibbs, it always stinks when you come out on the losing side, especially when you play so well for 20 minutes. It makes it a little bit more sour. But, again, you guys always do a game-by-game approach. But it was one of the things that I brought up with Coach Watson last week, and actually talked with Coach Alexander from Belmont going into the game. You know, there's 11 of the 12 teams this year in the league that have gone a week straight and won every game. And then there's 9 of the 12 that have gone a week straight and lost every game. The point being, as tough as it feels right now, my goodness, that thing can flip very quickly.
It can. And like I mentioned before, win or loss, we have to learn from it. You know, and I think we've done a great job learning from each game. You know, it's a loss, but also I can look at it as a positive of looking at what we need to fix. And I mentioned that the halftime, us being up 13 and then losing that lead is something that we haven't done this year, but we can learn from that experience. I can learn from that experience. Coach Hawk, the entire staff can learn from that experience. And I'm not glad that it happened. I'm not glad that we lost, but I'm more excited for the opportunity to learn from that and improve from it.
You, of course, came with Coach Nagy over from Wright State to here. You've now almost a full season into the Missouri Valley Conference. From just a coaching perspective, how would you say those leagues have been different in terms of just the scouting level within the league? I think everyone understands the talent level too, but in terms of the adjustments, all the stuff that you have to do on the fly, like, describe the level of coaching that you guys go up against each and every night.
I think it's unbelievable. Just coming into the league, we was always told, you know, it's a physical league, you know, very demanding defensively. But I think these coaches have done a tremendous job on the offensive end. You know, it's a lot of good offense in this league, and just watching and scouting the different opponents. You know, each team they run some really good stuff. You know, from top to bottom. And then just even looking at the set that Bradley ran yesterday to win the game, just X and O's throughout this league is unbelievable.
And you look at that set, and I also saw on social media they ran that set to beat UAB 1 year prior, which it's crazy in terms of, like, when you think of your memory bank and those type of things. I mean, as an OC, I mean, to give the fans somewhat of an insight, I mean, how much of that knowledge base, like, do you have, Coach Gibbs, of, man, like, I remember this working a year ago, 2 years ago, different circumstances, maybe different teams, like, how much is running through your mind, and the best way you find to try, whether it's a sheet in front of you, a little call sheet, cheat sheet, whatever it is, to think of different ways, different situations to attack teams?
You know, for me, it's weird because I could be sitting at home watching TV and say, all right, if it's a tie ball game with 6 seconds to go, we just call a timeout, what would I run? And I randomly just, think about that in my head. But also enjoy not only just watching our league, just watching college basketball in general, just seeing what different teams are doing, just watching NBA games, seeing what different sets, you can bring to the college level. But for me, I don't want to call it an obsession, but I enjoy the game. The X and O's part for me is something I like to dissect and just also see if it can work for us, and I think that's one of the main improvements that we've had, like I mentioned, since I've taken over this role. It's always room for improvement, but just having that heart, that aspect of just enjoying the X's and O's is something that I do enjoy and love. But just also just watching our games and seeing what sets work, what doesn't work. I have a huge gallery of things that we've ran this year that like I mentioned before, I just enjoy every aspect of it.
Don't want to say every team is different, but there's always, it seems like, maybe at least one guy, if not a couple on each team, where there's portions of a year where they don't play much at all, and then all of a sudden they're one of the most important pieces.
Yeah.
I'm kind of alluding to Jorge
Yeah.
and what he's done over the last month, these last 10 games, really probably since that UIC Valpo road swing when he was really big. And it's not just what we described earlier, his passing ability, what he does defensively. He's made 7 of his last 8 free throws.
Yeah.
Like, he's confident when he gets to the line. Confidence, I know, is where it comes from, but outside of just pure confidence, not giving up on the year.
Yeah.
What's impressed you about Jorge over this stretch?
It's funny that you said that. I was talking to the staff, and I said I can't wait to tell my son about a kid who I coach named Jorge. And they laughed. They were like, "What are you talking about?" And I said, nothing was going his way personally, getting playing time on the court, but he was ready for his moment. And when his moment came, he was, he prepared. He was ready when his name was called, and he took advantage of it. Now he's an important piece to us. When a month ago, he really wasn't playing it at all. And we're excited when, when Jorge gets his opportunity, and he's taking advantage of it with film sessions. He always practiced hard when he wasn't playing, and now he's seeing the fruits of his labor when staying into it when things weren't going his way.
What analytically for you, Coach Gibbs, do you really value most in terms of judging where you guys are at offensively?
The biggest thing is where are we making shots and where are we getting the most shots? I know we're not leading nowhere near the conference in 3-point attempts and shots, but we put pressure on teams defensively when we get at the rim. We like to post 1 through 5, and the biggest thing for us is to try to get the most high percentage shots possible. I think that's what we've been doing lately, but also just putting pressure on the defense from a transition standpoint as well. Let's get stops and let's run. Let's have fun in transition.
You think of where this group, man, has just grown so much throughout the year. And look, there's a lot of analytical data, things you can go up against. But from an offensive perspective, Valley's one of the best offense efficient leagues in the country, stacked up. Why do you believe that is? What is it about the offenses in this league that make them such a hard thing to guard?
I know it's easy. It may be easy to say, but I think it's the coaches, but it's the players. There's some really, really skilled guys in this league, and I believe the coaches put these guys in great situations. There's great guards, there's great bigs, but there's some really, really good offensive-minded coaches in this league.
One of the things that stood out to me when I brought this up to Coach Nagy before the game the other day, talking about the importance of Damian Mayo, was the last 10 games heading into the Belmont. Now, of course, that excludes the first 5, which I know weren't great starts for us. But you look at the top last 10 games, the top 5 guys in the league in terms of plus minus. Figure Drake had 3 of the 5, which is no surprise in terms of Sturts, Mascari, and Abreu. Next was Darius Hanna. And who else was there? Damian Mayo.
Yep.
He was right there with those guys.
Yep.
Can you just – I know it's hard maybe on paper. And as you said, even people may all play hard. It's not a skill, et cetera. You went through that already. But what has his impact made? And when he is out there, why it shows, even in data. Bam, when Damian Mayo's on the floor, the Salukis are a better team.
Well, one of the biggest things is communication with him. I love that guy, but he doesn't stop talking. He's talking. He's communicating the defense. He's communicating, the offense. He's pointing where guys need to be. He's orchestrating every single thing. And when he's on the court, he's not giving you 99%. He's giving you 100%. And I think our players feed off of him. Just because of the energy that he brings. And I think his energy is really contagious. And it's contagious with me. I love it when he's on the court. I love it when he sits next to me. I love it when he's communicating with me. Off the court, he's texting. At practice, when he's on the sideline, he's telling me what he sees. Why don't we do this? Can we do this? But when it comes to communication, I think he's really, really good at that.
Hey, and in the Saturday, you look at during that 10-game stretch, only Northern Iowa, which you guys were fortunate enough to beat here in Banterra, and Drake had better records in that 10-game stretch. Bradley was 7-3 as well. You guys were 7-3. I don't want to say that this is a group that's losing their confidence in a tough game. That's not what I'm implying with this question. But how much do you guys have to remind the guys of, look, guys, over this stretch, you're one of the best teams in the league.
Yeah.
And if you can keep adding these days, make it a learning lesson. Don't waste the failure, as Coach Saban and other coaches have said during their coaching careers too. Like, maximize it, learn from it, because you have shown over a good chunk of span. That's not a small span now, 10 games.
Yeah.
You've shown over 10 games that you can be one of the best teams in the league.
You can always be confident after a win. You can always feel good after a win. But I think the championship teams, or after a loss, how can you come together and learn from it? And like you just mentioned that. And for us, we had a huge sample size the last 10 games, 7-3. The last 2, we've lost, but it's not over. Learn from it. Let's try to learn from it and try to win this championship. For us, we started off rough, but that wasn't a great feeling as well. And our team also found confidence in winning 7 out of the next 10. So these the last 2 games we didn't win, but how can we learn from that as well? Like from the same situation of how we learned from those first 5 games. And I think that's a real example and pedigree of a championship team.
You guys as a staff, it's so important, right, to obviously be able to support Coach Nagy and not just Coach Nagy, but the guys as well. Where do you see your role, Coach Gibbs, in terms of, look, I think everybody said, man, body language, just the emotion, the energy level, because there was not where it needed to be.
Yeah.
Where do you see you in that to try to help, to help the staff, help you guys, help Coach Nagy, help the guys? Like, where do you see your role in that? And trying to get that turn where if you get in that position again, it can be a different result.
I grab the guys one-on-one when I meet with them and tell them, as I'm talking to you, I'm talking to myself as well. Body language is huge, but, I need to improve my body language. If my body language is great, you can feed off me. Let me feed off you. And just tell those guys, I'm not perfect either. We're in this thing together. And I think once our guys, realize, we're fighting with them, they trust us like you've seen the last 10 games and understanding, like, we have the ultimate belief that we can win this thing, and it'll come together. And I think our guys' confidence, like I mentioned, from game 1 to where it is now, is completely different.
We have seen this year where maybe if first games haven't gone well, you've been able to really play much better in the second game. And even Bradley wasn't a game that went well the first time around, but no doubt the second time around was much more of a test than it was the first time. But even within own guys like Jarrett really struggled against Evansville the first time he played. Second time, they didn't want to see Jarrett Hensley throughout that game. I know the first time Nick Ellington had a really successful night for Murray. Jarrett's going to be a huge piece of that, as well as Jorge and Rollins. How do you guys improve from what you take from the Murray State first game, where they really were physical with you guys, to try to match that physicality as much as you can the second time around?
I think one of the most important things is film. Show it over and over and over again what they did to us. Where were we successful? Where did we didn't have success? This is what we need to do. This is what they did, in the games. Since then, film is huge. Just showing these guys this is exactly what we need to do to be successful and what we need to improve in and improve on. And this is what other teams had success with them in, and this is what they did, successfully to other teams. But the film sessions are huge individually and as a team.
Even though the last 2 starts of the second half haven't been great, Bradley and most recently against Belmont, has there been anything you guys as a staff, I know there's always things you guys identify, but in terms of main things Coach gives, where you're like, gosh, just for some reason, just this last week, we've really struggled in this area to come out of the second half with a much stronger start?
Yeah, we have to be the aggressor, being up 13 points. It just kind of felt relaxed, and I want these guys to feel at all times like we're down. Attack it. We're up 13 points. Let's increase this lead. Don't be satisfied, and try to not to lose the lead. Increase it. Be the aggressor. I always tell our guys to be the aggressor. And it's crazy. Like when just playing games, you can always tell the most aggressive team has the less fouls. It's weird how the thing how it goes. So for us, it's just halftime. It's being excited, where we are at halftime, we say we're up 13, but don't be satisfied. Come out, be the aggressor, increase that lead, and don't come out trying not to lose the lead.
Coach Gibbs, really appreciate the time. Looking forward to round 2 here at Murray State in a day, and it'll be a lot of fun, brother. Thanks so much for coming on the show.
Thank you.
Welcome back, everybody, to Inside Saluki Athletics, presented by Poly Eyes of Carbondale. Join us this week on the men's basketball side. It's Jorge Moreno, who is becoming a very big crowd favorite in Banterra. Jorge, man, appreciate the time, brother. How's life going?
It's going pretty good. How about yours?
Well, hey, when I get to call some Jorge Moreno buckets, man, that's a lot of fun now. There's a lot of juice in the building when you bring it. It's been a while since we've been able to catch up with you on a platform like this. It was really mostly back in the summer. So for the fans, I know they still listen to our interviews, and Coach Watson's caught up with you through this year. But take us through your body transformation, Jorge, of when you got here in the summer to where you are now, like the differences in how you feel and the work you have put in almost a year's time.
I mean, I feel better in shape, that's for sure. I lose a lot of weight, but I still have a lot of to improve on my body. Like, I still don't feel comfortable how I'm supposed to be moving.
You mentioned the weight you have lost. I mean, how much weight have you lost since when you got to campus?
Probably like 20 pounds.
Wow. Can you feel it? Like, are those
Yes.
areas where clearly, like when you're on the floor, like where does it help you improve from a basketball scene, other than like duration, like longer time? Like, where in your game has it really helped you to lose that weight, Jorge?
I feel it makes me help run faster. It helps me, like, my body to don't feel like sore all the time. My knees feel better. It's just losing weight. Like, it was like a really important goal for myself this year.
One of the areas when I talked to Coach Nagy, and I'm like, Coach, who are some guys that have really improved? And he's like, there's no one that's improved more than Jorge Moreno. Where do you believe you've grown the most within this year, Jorge? Like when you think back to even early November and, late, of course, October when this thing was really getting cranked up to now.
I mean, the first thing I would say is confidence. Like, before coming here, I was just like thinking like, just going like to do like a normal life. I was thinking like out of sports. But now I start feeling better with myself, like when the time, because in the beginning it was hard, like because I was trying like to do what everybody else was doing, but my body just couldn't.
You mentioned trying to do everything what everybody else was doing. What helped you in that time, Jorge, to not focus on that and just, hey, I got to be the best version of myself?
Probably my family. Yeah, probably my family, my girlfriend too, my coaches. Just a little bit of everybody. Like my teammates too, they helped me a lot this year. They helped me like push over even when I was on the limit.
Yeah, and one of the areas for me that's always impressed me about you, Jorge, is the minutes have not always been there for you. Yet your energy level, your smile, all the things that you bring have always been there. And that's not easy when you're not being rewarded with a lot of playing time. Again, I know it leans on your family, girlfriend, all the areas who have supported you and your teammates and coaches to get you there. But it's easier said than done, man. Like, what were ways that you just kept yourself positive and kept working? Like, hey, there's going to become a time where I'm going to be needed and I'm going to be ready when that time is.
It was really hard. I would not lie, like to have a smile, but like at the same time, it's like I really like my teammates. Like I really found like actually like as a friends. So I was just trying to be happy for them. Like, and I know like whenever they give me like an opportunity, I will go and take it.
Who are some guys on the team, Jorge, when you say, man, I really care about them? I know this team has really shown that they care about one another this year. All of you guys have said it. But who are some guys you've grown really close to and have enjoyed building a relationship with this year?
Like all of them for real.
Yeah.
Because like we really have fun with everybody. Like one day can be with, for example, Mayo. The other day can be with Davian. Like and it can be going like that. Like every day it change.
In terms of the day-to-day, what about this team, whether it's, things are really high where you've been able to win some really big games or things were low where, like Saturday against Belmont, not a great second half, but yet you guys keep coming to work each day. What is it that keeps this team together in your eyes, Jorge?
That I think everybody wants to win. And we're like your basketball team is like your family, so you just keep whenever you met with your sister, you're going to be mad with them, like because she did a mistake or something like that, but you have to clean it and just keep going.
There are many moments where I can think for you over the last couple of weeks that have really been highs where you've changed, and I don't want to necessarily you've changed, but you've really impacted games, Jorge. I want to talk about your passing ability. That's an area for me that has really been on display the last couple of weeks. Do you feel that's an impact that you can have for this team in terms of your vision within the court, and especially in the half court of where it's making some key skip passes to really kind of flip defenses to get them in tough rotations? Like, where have you seen your passing ability really grow this year? Kind of that was an area over the summer that you felt that you really could really help this team out with.
I did, but like the same thing when I was so out of shape, I was just watching a tunnel. Like I was just like I was not thinking on the play. I was just trying to. I was thinking more in myself. Like, come on, I was trying to push myself because if not, I was just going to quit.
Yeah. I mean, I also remember so many times this summer, Jorge, and I think, again, it goes back to who you are. And I think it's important for our fans to know this. Whenever there would be sprints, et cetera, and you'd be well behind guys in those sprints, but you'd always finish them. You would never stop. It may take you more time to finish them, but you always did. How has that kind of mentality for you of, look, you're going to keep pushing through, and how those times maybe in the summer, as brutal as they are to go through and as tough as that is to go through, can you feel that's helping you right now that you've been through kind of those tough times back in the summer?
Yes, because that's how I was like. How I grew with my family. Like they always tell me like you're never going to get anything. Like even if you say, for example, being tall, that do helps, but at one point that stopped helping. Like everybody's going to start being your same size.
Yeah.
So you just need to keep going. Like if you don't have that mentality, I think that you're just going to be comfortable where you're at.
For this team, Jorge, I mean, you had a huge impact in that first half against Belmont. And then, of course, second half was not what anybody wanted. As you guys have worked here in practice, you know, we're catching up with you here early in the week where there hasn't been a lot of practice in between then. But what were the big things where you're like, man, we got to fix that? That can't happen in the second half. What were areas that were really a struggle in that second half that you're trying to improve on from Belmont on Saturday?
Probably the intensity, I would say the most. Like we look really good defensively on the first half, and the second half everybody I think that we just look bad.
It's a weird thing, Jorge, that for the most part this year, and especially when the season flipped here in January, you guys have had really good starts and good endings to halves. This past week, for some just weird reason, at Bradley, the start of the second half wasn't great. Of course, the start of the second half against Belmont wasn't great. Is there any commonality in those, Jorge, just of what made it just it's a weird dynamic for you guys because it's been an area that's not always been a weakness for you guys as a group?
I know, but like I think that's something like everything has to go through that so they can grow. So I think when we're able to skip that, I don't know how to say this in English, like el tope.
Yeah.
When we're able to go through that, I think we're going to be like a really good team.
Look, Coach Nagy has said from the start that the ultimate goal, look, everybody wants to win a championship, right, at the beginning of the season, even though a conference championship is out of reach in terms of a regular season championship. Tournament championship, no question, that's what you guys are working towards. But he said, we want to be a team that nobody wants to see at the end of the year. How can this team do that, Jorge? What are things that you guys have to do here over the next couple of weeks, starting with Murray State this week, to start working towards that, to be a team that nobody wants to see come late February and early March?
Playing hard and playing defense. That's the things that I will say that was the main chance that when we start winning the games.
No doubt. Playing hard especially helps, and that's why our fans have fallen in love with you, Jorge. You are a guy that's continuing to play hard and do tremendous things. Appreciate the time coming on the show this week, brother.
Thank you so much
Appreciate the time.
We're talking women's basketball on Inside Saluki Athletics, presented by Poly Eyes of Carbondale, with head coach Kelly Von White. And coach, with this weekend, definitely some improvements, when you look at the difference between Thursday's game and Sunday's game, but ultimately, obviously, two frustrating results. Kind of walk me through the weekend from your perspective and what kind of led to the improvements between the two games.
Well, I think you're playing against the team in our first game that brought tremendous physicality, that has a veteran point guard that just ran her team. They hurt us on the boards, and they were just really physical with us. You got a team right there that's fighting for a championship. They're in first place right now, and she has them rolling right now. Coming into it, the second game, we showed our young ladies last year, at their place and the adjustments that they had made with this roster. And I thought our young ladies fought. I thought they fought. Their defense was extremely well those first couple of quarters. The second and third quarters, I believe, was when we really kind of locked down a little bit on them. The third quarter killed us where we just weren't able to score. They weren't doing anything different. We knew they were going to switch 1 through 4, which is how we got some easy stuff, early on. But then there just was a little segment there where they just exploded past us a little bit. I was proud of our young ladies, their resiliency. They cut it back to 10. I think we had a chance a couple times to get it to single digits and just kind of ran out of gas a little bit.
I know one thing that we talked about on the pregame show before UIC on Sunday was the physicality that they bring. There's just such a big team,
Yeah.
So good on the defensive end, but it seemed like we matched that physicality, and I know that's been a talking point throughout the year. This team's gotten a lot more physical.
Yeah.
How has that happened throughout the course of the year?
You know what? We just let our practice team beat them up a little bit. TT's probably put on about 2.5 pounds throughout the course of the season, got a little stronger there a little bit. But when you look at that game, we did step up and match them a little bit. I think they had 19 baskets. We had 18 baskets. So they didn't overpower us offensively. Our percentages were very similar. The difference in the game, they shot 19 free throws, not unwarranted, but that goes back a little bit to that physicality. They were able to get it inside a little bit more, second chance points. They broke away from us. We were tied or right about that at halftime in rebounding, and they got away from us a little bit with them just being able to get some second chance opportunities.
Now looking ahead, obviously doesn't get any easier when you go out to Iowa with Drake coming up in Des Moines on Thursday, and then UNI in Cedar Falls on Saturday. Looking at Drake and what they've done lately, it all starts with Katie Dinnebeer. You talk about Lacey Stokes with Missouri State. It's Katie Dinnebeer with Drake. She just had a 40-point game the other night against Belmont.
Yeah.
When you see that and a player that's so clearly in the zone and playing at arguably an All-American level, how do you challenge that?
You know what? We're going to throw a lot of different looks at her. And just like with Lacey coming in here, Lacey wasn't the leading scorer. She has the capability to be, just like Dinnebeer does, but she wasn't the leading scorer. She just facilitated and ran her ball club and executed her stuff. So Katie is more of a scoring threat than that, but it's still, she has like 100 at the time, that last I checked, 183 assists to 83 turnovers or something like that. And it's just their brand of ball. You slow them down by trying to slow the clock down and understand tempo. You can't get into a running game, with them. And you got to be in a stance 30 seconds more than anybody else in this conference. It's the read and react, that kills you because you can scout it, but they're able to make really good reads off of that. So you still got to get some balls pressure to disrupt a little bit, to give your defense a chance to get to where we need to be without giving up some easy buckets. Last game, Mia Gaines came in and did a really good job inside with them and challenging Miller a little bit. Isabella had a breakout game. That game we struggled inside because a lot of attention was being paid to Gift. But we're going to move some people around a little bit and see if we can get a little bit more offensive production.
Defensively, in that first matchup against Drake, it was the three-pointers. It just seemed like they couldn't miss. And Abby Alsmo was their leading scorer. It wasn't Dinnebeer.
Yeah.
Mainly due to those three-pointers. And, there have been times where three-point defense has been a struggle. How do you adjust that going into Drake?
Yeah, we saw some teams the second time around where we made a bigger adjustment. We were getting too deep in help a little bit, and it was just hard to get out because you want to help on the inside. We've made some adjustments and we haven't been giving that up as much. So we're going to do some things. Again, you'll see us trying to rotate on some things a little bit differently where we'll have to hold our own inside, and I think Mia will help us a lot with that.
And that three-point defense definitely took a step forward on Sunday against UIC. Lastly, we've got TT Nelson on later in the show here, and we've talked about her throughout the season a few times as a player who's continued to improve. First and foremost, as just a sophomore, she's had to take on somewhat of a veteran role. Just how impressive is it for somebody to do that after she didn't play a whole lot of minutes last year?
Yeah, and I think the biggest thing with that is you got to want it. you got to want it. It's your mindset, coming in. And TT came into this year like, I ain't sitting on that bench again. I'm not doing it. So whatever we've asked her to do, that's what she's been a chameleon. And hey, I need you to play the point for me. All right, coach, I'll play the point for you. Hey, by the way, I also need you to guard the best scorer, on that other team. So we've stretched her. She asked for those minutes and she's getting all of them. But the biggest thing about that is she plays until her tank is on E. She gives us everything she has. I asked my staff, we were working, and I just said, hey, let's just do a draft. If any of you guys were drafting off our team and you had to start a team with how we want to play, what would that look like? And TT came out of a lot of coaches' mouths just because she does what we ask her to do. Yeah, does she make mistakes with that? She does. But when you go about her stat line, don't just look. Well, she had a pretty good shooting percentage tonight, but don't just look at that. TT stats go in every category, and that's what I need my young players to understand. She gets it. Yeah, I can get to the rim. Yeah, we're going to continue to work on that mid-range, but she does what she does well, and that's the biggest thing. The only time I got on her in this last game was she was disappointed in a play and got that head down. And normally she's pretty good at NBA action, but it does take a toll on you, at times. And so her team was lifting her back up because they know how hard she generally goes, and they didn't want her to focus on that one play.
No doubt. She's kind of been the engine that's made us go at times here. Coach, appreciate the time, and we'll talk again before Thursday's game at 6 p.m. in Des Moines against Drake. Thanks, Coach.
You're welcome.
Back on Inside Saluki Athletics, presented by Polly Eyes of Carbondale, joined for the second time this season by sophomore guard T.T. Nelson, who's been a key cog in the Saluki engine, especially here lately. T.T., first, thanks for taking the time, and second, this weekend, obviously disappointing with 2 losses, but anytime you have the blackout cancer jerseys out, it's a special weekend, playing with a different last name on the back of the jerseys, representing a few different names. Obviously, your name, the SIU brand, and also somebody who's battled cancer. How special is that to be a part of such a good cause?
It's always been special to me because my godmama was affected by it, so I always try to play for her these last 2 years. But also this year, I got lucky and had Coach Chester's wife, father last name on it. So it was kind of nice to play for someone that was like close to me. So
That's
I
awesome.
enjoyed playing it.
That's awesome. Your play, we talked kind of early in the season when you initially took a big step forward, and you've been able to sustain that success. But you had a little bit of a shooting slump there, kind of right when conference play started, a few games in. But you continued to play with confidence and continued to shoot the ball. As a player, how difficult is it to go through something like that in conference, and how'd you get yourself out of it?
It's very difficult and it's always on my mind. But my coaches and like my teammate, my family, they just always encourage me, and I know that it's gonna fall one game. I just have to keep going and just keep working on it. But definitely give it to my teammates because they definitely be like, you're gonna hit those shots. Just keep going and don't lose your confidence. So I gotta give it to them.
We talked with Coach earlier in the show, but during our pregame interviews, she's always quick to point out that you're the most physical player on the team, whether that's offense, defense, never afraid to drive into the lane. With that, you're not necessarily the most physically imposing player. Where did you pick up that physical brand of basketball?
I just try to play tough. If that means being physical, that's what I gotta do. To at least try to show my teammates like we can all do it, no matter size, no matter height. We can all be physical some way. So I just try to play tough in the game, every game.
It's hard over height, right?
Yeah.
Perfect. With the defense, you're often assigned to it the team's best player. And looking at this week, that's Katie Dinnebeer for Drake. That's Maya McDermott for UNI. How do you embrace that challenge?
I kind of take it as a compliment because, like, I don't know, it's fun. I think it's fun playing against someone that's good, and it gives me confidence. That gives me motor. Like, I'm guarding the best player, so try to shut them down, just limit it from their average, make them not score as much. But I enjoy it, even though it's tiring. But I do enjoy guarding the best players.
When you play a player like Katie Dinnebeer and you see some of the stat lines that she's put up, they're so multidimensional, but also knowing that she can go out and drop 40 on any given night. Does that change the way you guard a player like that?
I mean, it definitely does, but I'm just going to play tough, play hard, and just sell out the most I can to limit those points so she won't get 40 on us.
Looking at one way you affect the game is kind of deflections and steals, or deflections that lead to steals. That's a stat that a lot of coaches talk about that are kind of underrated, is deflections. Defensively, I imagine some of that is instinct and talent, and some of that probably takes development. For you, where do you feel like that is? Was that something that you just had when you started playing basketball? You had that instinct when to jump a pass or when to go for a steal? Or is that something that you've kind of had to develop?
Well, I think I've always been aggressive when it came to like getting deflections before college, but also just I'm long, so it's kind of easier to do. And knowing if I keep my hands up, most times than not, I can get deflections. I just got to remember to keep my hands up, and that's when the deflections come.
No doubt. Looking at the challenges that lie ahead this week and those two Iowa teams, it almost seems like yesterday, just last year, we were in Cedar Falls. You had your season high 9 points at UNI, but there's been so much turnover on the roster, and you're one of the only players left that played at UNI last year. When you play two championship caliber programs with such a young team, what do you try to say to your younger teammates to, spark them to take things to another level?
What I say, any game, I just say as long as we play hard, you never know what the outcome could be. Like when we played against Belmont, we was right there. We just lost the team. So I just say as long as we play hard and play together and just worry about the next play and not the score. If it's like a 10-point lead, just one play at a time, anything could happen. And really just telling them, like, it's more time than what you think. Like being down with 10 in the fourth quarter with 4 or 5 minutes, a lot of time that they don't realize. But just playing hard throughout the whole game.
No doubt. Well, TT, appreciate the time, and best of luck this week.
Thanks, Larry.
We've got more Inside Saluki Athletics coming up next.
Welcome back to Inside Saluki Athletics, presented by Poly Eyes of Carbondale. It's championship week for men's swimming and dive. Of course, it was the MAC championships last year, Missouri Valley championships this year. Coach Jeff Hansen is here to preview it all. And then guess what? Next week will be another championship with the women's swimming and diving championships. You're not busy at all.
Yeah.
I mean, you're stress-free right now. This is the best time to be you, right?
Yeah, right. The home washing machine's going to get some use on the 48-hour or 24-hour turnaround.
Well, we were talking before you started recording, Coach. I mean, describe the year, because it looks like from afar, not being able to be at all your meets, but watch your results, especially from a men's side and women's. There's been positives really for both your teams so far through the year.
Yeah, the men did start a little bit slow. We lost our first couple dual meets to some really quality opponents. We weren't disappointed in how we performed. We just knew we could get better, and so it's really been a unique season in that every time we've gotten in and raced, whether it was our mid-season checkpoints with our home invitational, and then we go to the Purdue Invitational, each one of those meets got better and better. And then through the winter break, we added two semester additions that really shored up a couple of holes that we have and will help our depth a lot. And so coming out of the winter break, our competitions have been really, really good. We feel sharp and ready, and the timing of the meet is a little bit different than normal, but we feel like our guys are ready to go this week.
The last time we caught up with you was at the start of the season, and it's amazing how fast it goes,
Crazy,
Coach.
yeah.
But to those that may not know, yes, the leagues, of course, the affiliation, switching from the MAC to now the Valley this year. Championship meet, as I was kind of asking, doesn't really change, but in terms of the timing of these meets, it has changed drastically. Just walk the fans through of maybe how you had to reshift kind of maybe your training schedule, how you've had to reset your schedule in general of what it used to be to now this year, making sure you're performing at your best with such a different schedule.
Yeah. The men's meet has moved up a full 2 weeks, which may not sound like a lot, but it really is when we come out of the winter break and we get right back into classes. And one of the nuances of swimming, diving not so much, but swimming is we taper, we rest our teams. The sprinters rest more than the middle distance, and the distance rests less than everybody else. And then the men and women rest completely differently. So we were used to a schedule where the women's meet was first, and then we had a full week off, and then the men's meet, and so you could kind of parallel the tapers and that with the women and men. And now it's opposite. I mean, our men are 48 hours from the meet or just about that, and fully tapered down and doing very little work, and the women were in this morning doing a 90-minute hard practice, So the timing's a little bit different, but that's what we as coaches get paid for, is to figure out the training plan, and it's, we knew this in the summertime, so it wasn't a surprise going into the season, but we did have to make some adjustments on what we did through the winter break particularly.
When I phrase this question this way, it may somewhat seem of a negative vibe. Has anything surprised you this year? Really more from a positive. Like what has maybe surprised you, even though there's so much time where you spend around to see how the men and the women are training, that you are expecting, like, people on the outside may not know what's coming, but you do because you see it every day. But has there been like, wow, I am really happy for this individual group of individuals who have really put in the work, and this year it showed?
Yeah, this is the last year of the COVID fifth year extra eligibility year, and so we've got some fifth year seniors who've been in the program now, for a long time, and some of them are really stepping forward. Fernanda Sanchez on the women's side has become one of our top middle distance and distance swimmers, and to see her do that in her fifth year of eligibility and last year of swimming with us, when kids commit to that extra year, you kind of never know how bought in they're going to be, how half in, half out, and all of our fifth years have been all the way in. Donat Chavarsky, who's a conference champ many times over, had a little bit of a down year last year and is back this year and will really be a huge asset in our sprints and our relays. And so a couple of those that we've gotten to know really well, that they've been here 5 years now, and a lot of sports have that redshirt year, so they're typical 5-year kids, but that's not typical in swimming. So it's been really fun to see that, and then just some of our top performers that continue to get better every time they dive in. Olivia Heron is right now doing things that I don't think anybody expected at the beginning of this year. She just keeps getting faster and faster. Our other top performers, our NCAA qualifiers from last year, Celia Polito has been at faster than she's ever been through every checkpoint this year, and so we're expecting great things. And Alex Santiago on the men's side, as an NCAA qualifier last year, excited to see where he is, because he's likewise done things in season and tired and all of that he was never close to before. So we're expecting some big things from our top kids.
You hinted it wasn't the start that you necessarily wanted on the men's side. What did your group learn in that tough start that you believe is maybe starting to reap its benefits now at the most important time?
Yeah, I think it just kind of brought them together. We talked about winning the conference meet as a whole, starting last spring, and to have a little bit of a rocky start, it was maybe a wake-up call for a couple of guys that maybe didn't do as much in the summertime as they ought to have, and but that's understandable, and it kind of brought everybody together, and by the time we got through to our mid-season meets, we were really swimming great and putting up fast times for that time of the year. And then, like I said, adding a couple of guys at semester. Uri Barkat is a Croatian. I am her backstroker, and then Rodrigo Ramos from Mexico is a sprint and middle distance freestyler. Both those guys kind of brought a spark. They're in events where we have good swimmers, but it's sort of elevated those guys around them as well. So it's been a great building process for the men, and I think they're really feeling confident about where we are.
It's really across all the sports here, Coach, in terms of what is great about working at Division I athletics and being part of Division I athletics is the so many different backgrounds and the diverse backgrounds that make up a team. But there are some sports where the backgrounds are even way more diverse. What about swimming and diving, and specifically with your group this year on both the men's and the women's side? What do you enjoy about the different personalities, all the different backgrounds, and also how do you try to learn them all and get to know them because it's such a diverse group?
It really is. I mean, we're I think this year we have 14 countries represented on our team, which is it's been the history of SIU swimming. It's always been a very international program. Every program I've been in, we've had a lot of internationals. This is maybe just a step above that with as many as we do have. But I think it's the best part of our team. We get people from all over the world, all, like you said, all kinds of backgrounds in terms of their swimming background, their education background, family background, all different continents and all different ability levels. And so, it's through their time here, they get to learn a lot about other cultures and other ways of doing things. But then the thing that's so special about it is the only reason all those people are here, all 14 countries are represented, is for this team, for SIU Swimming and Diving. And ultimately when they graduate and they travel the world, they can go to just about any place in the world and have a former teammate to stay with and get together with, and it's just really cool.
I don't want to say it makes it much more difficult of a challenge, but when you have 14 different countries represented, obviously that means not everybody maybe over break or even at times can get a chance to go home because it's so difficult in terms of the travel, whatever it may be.
Yeah.
How much more does that put on your plate, Coach Hance? And when I say more on your plate, like, oh, it's a no, I mean like more of it really pushes you to create that family type feel because not everyone can be able to go see their family because of their distance away.
Yeah, no, there's no doubt. We've got a group here that was here all through the Thanksgiving break, that was here all through the winter break, all through Christmas. Spent Christmas here. And that's tough. We try to bring them in, and the team around them has done a phenomenal job of welcoming everybody that comes in, wherever they're coming from, whether it's Illinois or across the world. We did hold workouts during the Thanksgiving break for those kids because they couldn't just sit in their apartment or in their dorm room and not do anything for that time. The great thing about it, and that's what we tell the kids that we talk to, the recruits that we talk to from overseas, is you're not going to be the only one going through this here. You've got other freshmen that are going through it at the same time. You've got upperclassmen who've been through it for years and can help you. So there's nobody that comes in and feels like they're not supported by the team and by the coaches and by the support staff.
Where do you think, as you look ahead now, let's look at the championships this week for the men and then also look into next week kind of as a whole. What do you believe Coach is going to be when you sit with your staff, when you communicate with your athletes? If we're going to be the team that can win it, here's going to be our path. Here's where we really have to excel, even though obviously in championship meets you need all areas to really excel.
We do, and every team, I think the men's meet is going to be a 3-team race between us, Missouri State, and Miami. Miami's the 4-time champion in the MAC at least. Every team has weaknesses. Every team has strengths. There's no defense in swimming and diving. We can't get in their way. The only thing we can do is play our offense better than they do theirs, and that's execute, particularly in prelims. The points go on the board at night, but if you don't earn those lanes in the top 8 A final or the 9 to 16 B final in the prelim session, you don't get to score those points at night. So that's been, we train every morning. We train 6 mornings a week between 6 a.m. and 10 a.m. depending on the day to be ready to race at 10:30 in the morning, which is prelims time. So mornings are critical. We'll put all of our emphasis in prelims, and then at night you come back and just try to move, advance your spot if you can and score some more points. Relays are also critical. I mean, relays score double points. As much as anything, it's a tone setter. And we were 2 years ago at Miami. We won 4 of the 5 relays. We're DQ'd in one that I still haunts me because I don't think it was a DQ, and I think we would have won all 5. But that's something we've hung our hat on at the men's side in particular is winning those relays. And so that's the first event out of the gate on Wednesday night is a 200 medley relay and an 800 free relay, and that sets the tone for the rest of the meet.
You mentioned it could be a 3-team battle on the men's side. On the women's side, no, over a week away, but what do you kind of expect there in terms of the teams that can really be in the mix?
Yeah, a little different dynamic on the women's side. There are more teams, so we score 24 places, so depth is even more important on the women's side. Indiana State, Missouri State, and SIU, I think, are the top three that'll be battling for the team title. I think our top performers will outperform anyone else's top performers. I think we'll win more than any other team, but it's the depth. And again, prelims, putting multiple women in the top 8, the top 16, the top 24 to score those points. That's where it's at, because we've got defending champions and swimmer of the year and all of that that I have no doubt will perform at a high level. But it's the whole roster, our 20 scoring women and our 18 scoring men. Those are the scoring limits. What those 17th, 18th, 19th, 20th people do in terms of scoring points is what's going to make the difference.
What have you found, Coach? Which, look, it's why you're in your spot. It's why the athletes pick the sport. But those can be really long days, and you hope they can be really long days and productive days. What have you found as being the most successful to maximize the time, to be ready to roll when that's right in the morning? Get some rest time as much as you can before you get right back after it in the evening.
Yeah, no, it's the training. It's the training we've done all year. We feel like we invest in the end of the week. Every championship meet is Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday. It is long days. It's a lot of swimming. If you're on relays and individual events and prelims finals, it's upwards of 10, 12 swims over that period of time. So we replicate that in training. I try to schedule a lot of our dual meets on a Friday so we can come back Saturday morning and put in a great 2.5 to 3 hour practice that is really high quality and high intensity. And we call it Saluki Saturday. Saluki Saturday is the final day of the meet. We typically perform better than any other team on that final day. So setting ourselves up early in the meet, not to start slow, but to start out fast and keep the pace, and then get to Saluki Saturday and come in that Saturday morning and do what we do best.
Coach, appreciate the time. Good luck this
Thank you,
week, and then get some rest, get some really good laundry done, and then turn around, and we'll wish you well next week as well for the Women's Championships.
Awesome.
Appreciate it, Coach Hansen.
Thank you very much.
It is time for our weekly segment with head coach Lance Rhodes here on Inside Saluki Athletics, presented by Poly Eyes of Carbondale. Coach Rhodes, welcome back. I know travel a little bit wonky trying to get back. You guys came back, flying back on Monday, but I know a little bit of a mixed bag in terms of results, but at the same time, there are no doubt things to build on for your club after the opening weekend here at UTRGV.
Yeah, I mean, I think if you can just get outside of the feeling of the 2 losses, there's a lot of things that, we can learn from. There's a lot of positives that we saw. A lot of things that we were hoping from the pitching side of it was really good to see. And, we competed from a competitive standpoint really well on the weekend. I didn't think our guys gave in to any competition, any adversity or anything like that. So all those things were nice to see. Obviously, we can't be satisfied with just those little moral victories and things like that, because the wins and losses ultimately are what you're trying to get. But I do think with if you take a step back and you just look at the weekend and you look at all the things that went right and the things that we can correct, I do think if you can see light at the end of the tunnel, how it's going to lead to victories if we clean some things up. And I still think that there's high expectations for our guys over the course of the season.
Look, and we'll get into those things that your team did well over the weekend, but I know a lot of folks, of course, in Saluki Nation, their hearts are really hurting today after they learned of the passing of Itchy Jones, who don't have to really say much around here to know how much Itchy meant, not just to the baseball program, to the community of Carbondale, to this university. Your short time here, of course, you've been here more than just a short time, but I know you've had many exchanges with Coach Itchy Jones through the years. I know a lot of folks are hurting right now at the loss of Coach Jones, but, man, his impact, you guys preach daily of what he meant to this program.
100%. I think, there's been a lot of people that's had a lot of influence on Saluki Baseball, but I don't know if there's anybody that's had more than Coach Jones. And you look at, if you just kind of go through the Twitter feeds, the Facebook posts, not only was it just a huge impact with SIU, the Southern Illinois community, but there's people reaching out, from all across college baseball. I mean, he had a major impact on just the sport itself and just the growth of what he was able to do. You look at, being able to go to, 3 College World Series, just really taking a school in the Midwest and putting it on the map against all those major programs is just something that I don't know if anybody will be able to do those things again at a school like SIU against some of those major universities. I mean, it's just tremendous if you look back on all the things that they were able to accomplish against the competition that they were playing at that time. And just, the thing about it, every single former player that I'm in contact with now that are major, supporters of our program, just absolutely loved playing for Itchy. And I think it just goes to show how great of a coach he was with all the accomplishments that he was able to make, but just the relationships that they still had today just goes to show how much impact he had on those players.
I don't know how much you knew of Coach Jones prior to coming here, but when you got here, I mean, yes, his name's on the stadium, all those things. It's easy to look up the records and see his impact. But how quickly did it take Coach Rhodes for you to realize that side, what you just talked about, his impact on his players, his impact on staff members who are around the program, just any part of the university that he really touched, he made a major impact for? How long did it take you to realize that side of it from Coach Jones?
Oh, it wasn't long because everybody that I talked to, I mean, it was, Itchy this, Itchy that, which was awesome. And then, us being able to retire his number early, it kind of got pushed back with the COVID and stuff like that. But us being able to retire his number and just the huge amount of former players that came that weekend was just such a cool experience. And, it's just it's just awesome to see. Not only was he a great coach here, a great mentor to all those players, but he was also one of our biggest supporters. And not just from obviously the financial side, but man, he was he loved Saluki Baseball. He wanted us to win. He would always send me messages after games, supporting us from that side of it. And it's just going to be one of those things where hopefully we can continue to do our part to support Saluki Baseball and grow it, to where when you look back at the things that they did, those are the things that we want to accomplish too. Yeah. And, we want to make, their family proud of how we're playing SIU baseball. We want to make all of our alumni and all of our supporters proud of how we're playing, because a lot of the people that are watching us play, that are supporting us to this day, were the ones that were going to the College World Series, were going to the regionals and winning all those games. And we want to do our part and getting back to that level of baseball to where they're seeing SIU on the national stage like that.
Coach, obviously your interactions with Itchy are between you and him, but is there a message that you received during your time here as a head coach that really impacted you the most, just one that stands out at all through the years?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing was every time I would talk with him, it's just, hey, you got to love the players. If you're going to try to get them to perform and win and things like that, you got to love on the players. And I think if you look at all the people that are reaching out right now, I think that's what you see, is that those players, they loved playing for Itchy, and I'm sure he pushed and motivated and coached them extremely hard, and was obviously very knowledgeable of the game of baseball, and probably cutting edge for his time on teaching the game. But I also think he loved on them really hard as well, and I think that's why those guys loved playing for him and supporting so much.
I know he's been going through a lot of tough battles here recently, but now he can be at rest. I know all of Saluki Nation, you guys hope to honor him in the best way you can this year and continue to play well. And I know our thoughts continue to be with Coach Jones and his family. Well, let's kind of transition back to on the field, as I'm sure he would love for us to continue to talk about your team. And I know 1-2 record, only take 1 of 3 games, but one of the areas that you told me going into this weekend, Coach Rhodes, was, you know what, I'm really excited to see Alec Niggett pitch. I think 5 no-hit innings and the type of outing that he had on Saturday, that had to be great reinforcement for everybody, that what you guys have seen from the fall into the early portion here in the spring, that there's nothing being fooled with your eyes from what you've seen from Alec.
Yeah, really, it was one of those very satisfying moments as a coach when you're watching, because you've seen a kid that came in and had really good moments last year, and behind the scenes, such a good work ethic, such a good kid, And then you see him in inter squads throwing so well, and you're just like, man, I really want to see this against another team to make sure that it verifies that the hard work that he's put in, how he's throwing the ball, that it's going to translate. And just to see him go out there, and the environment was really cool. The crowd didn't affect him. The other team didn't. He just went about his business, did exactly what we've seen. And we've talked about this several times, but there's players all the time that take that jump from a midweek starter to going into the weekend rotation that have very successful, seasons. And I really think he's in line to be that type of player, man. He's just, I was very proud of how he went about his business on Saturday.
Truly believe at times in the game of baseball, Coach Rhodes, that your momentum will only carry you as much as your starting pitcher for that next day. And Jordan Husky gave yourself, no doubt, a great shot on Friday. What did you see from Jordan? Because I know he's another arm that you guys have been optimistic about. And, I mean, outside of just one kind of big inning late, thought his start was really productive for you on Friday to set a tone for the weekend.
Yeah, I thought he threw the ball extremely well. Looking back on that one, I probably kind of messed that up where I could have got him out and instead of running him back out. His pitch counts was so low. That was the thing. His pitch count was really low, but it was more of where I look back on it and wish that I would have made the move quicker I mean, they had 4,000 people at the park that night. There was emotions like crazy throughout the game. First game of the season, up and down 5 different times. There's a lot more that goes into just saying, hey, he's only thrown 60 pitches. And, he goes back out there. And when I was questioning, do I take him out, do I not, I wanted our bullpen guys to be able to come in for the first time, too, because I knew they were going to be new guys with just a clean inning. And I could have had that opportunity if I would have pulled the trigger, but I didn't. And then not only did he kind of get himself in trouble by hitting the first guy, and then we made a couple of defensive mistakes, but then I also had to bring in a pitcher for the first time on our team in Division I baseball with traffic all over the places too. So I did a couple things that I did not want to do that I could have avoided doing. And that's where, when I look back on it as a coach, I feel like I screwed that one up. On the first game there, because I could have put our guys in a better situation to succeed if I would have made the move quicker. And that's where, for me, I feel like I messed that one up on opening night.
Look, it's hard to always see through even a television lens exactly how power maybe translates, or not even necessarily just how power translates, but also how a park is playing. There's only so much you can necessarily describe or even see visually, knowing it was very windy, as we were talking about before we started recording, Coach Rhodes. And how did you feel your offense sort of played to what you expected, and kind of maybe under normal circumstances as you move throughout the year that make you really optimistic with what you saw in the 3 days down in Texas?
Yeah, I think what could probably be frustrating if you just look at a box score is you see a kind of a lower hit total, which obviously we've got to find a ways to rack up some hits. But we also probably hit legitimately 5 balls that under normal circumstances would have been home runs. If not only do you add 5 more hits to your total on the weekend, but you also add multiple runs on the weekend that didn't get over the wall. And we're not going to play in a ballpark that's that size for the rest of our season. It was a legitimate major league ballpark from the standpoint of it was a true 380 in the gap and a 401 to center field. So the dimensions were as big as we'll play in with the wind. We go down there, and it's probably the one weekend of the year they got that cold front running through there too. So their ballpark, the wind was coming straight out of the north all weekend right in our face. And it was kind of like we talked about, the fear of going down there with our offense the way that it's built. We're going to need some home runs to be able to score some runs with one swing of the bat. And I think we had some home runs. They just didn't go over the fence with the wind. And again, we can sit here and have all the excuses in the world. We've still got to be able to find ways to put some runs on the board and win games, because we're going to play other games where the wind's blowing in too. And we can't just sit here and say, well, if the wind's blowing in, we're not going to be able to score that day.
How good is it for your team too to face, yes, you would have loved the weekend to go in and get a sweep, or of course, obviously come out ahead 2-1 in a series, Coach Rhodes, but there were no doubt other factors that you had to deal with on the weekend in terms of adversity that comes a team's way. You guys are fighting back, your way on Sunday, and it was a tremendous effort there late to push and give yourselves a chance to possibly tie it or at least extend the game to the bottom half of the ninth. But as you know, there's going to be a lot of those moments throughout the year. So, sometimes it's good to go through some of those things again, to have to fight through adversity and things that are completely out of your control.
Yeah, I think, the sooner we can learn some of these things, I think it's going to help us throughout the season longer. But I think the two, big points that we've really got to learn from is, one, the margin of victory at the Division I level is so small. I mean, we're probably legitimately 3 plays away. You take all the weekend, there's probably 3 plays that takes us from 1-2 to 3-0. And then, you look at the Sunday game, we fought tremendous for the full 27 outs. But we can't wait until our back is up against the wall with our final, out of the game and try to get something going. I mean, our guys really stepped up the intensity there with, the pinch hit home run. And then it was just nobody was going to give in on the, trying to get the last out there. And, we've got to take that type of offense through the extension of the game, and then we can really put some pressure on opposing pitchers and break those guys early in the game and tack on runs rather than just waiting until you're fighting for your life there at the very, very end. And if we can do those things, we're going to be just fine.
Is that hard for teams to really comprehend the margin, Coach Rhodes, of really the difference of, like you described, that it's not like, guys, we were 1-2 because there was a drastic difference. It's literally 2 or 3 plays that change your whole weekend.
Yeah. No, I definitely think, when you look at just the variety of levels that our guys have came from, not that Division I baseball is just dramatically better than any of those, but just I guess when you think of talent pool, there's not that big gap, right? It's just a smaller gap there, and the teams are going to be, everybody we play is going to be very similar in talent. It's just who makes mistakes at the wrong times, and then does the other team take advantage of those mistakes? And that's what they did. We made some mistakes, but then they didn't necessarily score off those mistakes, but give credit to the other team. They got a hit right after those mistakes and drove in some runs, and that's what beat us. But we'll hopefully clean some of those things up sooner rather than later. And, we've still got to do our job as coaches, putting guys in the right position, putting guys in, when do we make changes as far as, putting some backups in there maybe potentially, does the lineup need to be shuffled a little bit, things like that. All of those things that they're things that I think in baseball, I think are tough to really navigate because, we're not a sport that you can sub guys in and out. We're not a sport that, you need some time to get in a little bit of a rhythm. So it's hard to, a guy goes out and has a bad game, on opening weekend. You don't want to just yank him right out because he's earned the opportunity to be a starter at the beginning of the season. And you want to feel like he's got some time to get comfortable and things like that. But at the same time, there's that fine line of when do you get other guys opportunities. So I think that's probably the tricky thing with our sport is navigating that, part of baseball where it takes time to get in a rhythm and get in a groove, feel good with your at-bats, but also, giving other guys opportunities whenever you need to make a change as well.
Look, Tennessee Tech this weekend, as we know, there's obviously some snow moving into our area here in the midweek. I know it has just been bitter cold within this area of the country. And, again, it was just an area that we were kind of talking about beforehand. You're just looking around, even places that typically are warm this time of year are cold. But just the challenges this weekend. I know you hope to get out there for 3 games, and you hope Friday, Saturday, Sunday. We'll see how the week progresses when it comes to that. But what you look forward to for your team for another opportunity on the road against Tennessee Tech.
Yeah, I think we're definitely going to play. When we play is still to be determined. Yeah. I think we'll get all the games in. Could possibly be Friday, Saturday, Sunday. Could be Saturday, Sunday, Monday. At this time of the year, we just got to be flexible. We can't make excuses about it. We're going to be able to get to play, and we're going to go play a team that they went 4-0 on the weekend, and they're probably feeling really good about themselves, and it'll be another good test. And that's the thing about our schedule that I really like, and it's very mid-major heavy, but I think when we look back on the season, I think a lot of these teams that we're facing are going to have really good years and have a chance to be really competitive in their league. And I think it's going to be a much tougher schedule than it maybe looks on paper to some people outside, because there's some really good mid-major teams that we're going to be competing against.
And that's the part about it, Coach Rhodes, is I think basketball maybe not so much. Football, you kind of have a good idea, but baseball, you really don't know what type of schedule you're really going to have, or you did have, once you get to really May to an extent, and even probably later April, when you look back and go, hey, those teams we played early on turned out to be pretty darn good, when at the time maybe you didn't necessarily know it, which is why everybody loves, there's so much analytical data at our fingertips, and it's great, right? But also, you got to give time for those numbers to really set roost, and once you get into the month of April, then that's probably where you can really see exactly what you're talking about. Like, yeah, the schedule on paper at the start of the year maybe didn't look very daunting, but then you go through it and you're like, yeah, there are a lot more challenges and stuff to overcome than maybe initially thought.
Yeah, I mean, and what we try to do is just pick some schools that historically have been really good. And, there were some people on UTRGV that were hurt the previous year that came back, that really beefed up their team a little bit, and throwing a couple pitchers back into the mix that would have graduated if they didn't get hurt last year. And, Tennessee Tech, like you said, I think they're a team that their coach had left whenever they were going to regionals. He came back, and they're kind of on the rise again, where they're getting back in the mix for a top of their league. And then the next weekend we turn around and we have Bowling Green coming in, who won the MAC last year. So, but it's all good things. We need to be challenged early. We need to go up against good competition and get ourselves ready for league play. And I think our schedule is definitely going to be able to do that.
Coach Rhodes, appreciate the time as always, and have a great weekend in Tennessee. Get all 3 of those games in, and we'll catch up with you next week.
Sounds good. Thank you.
Once again, that was head coach Lance Rhodes. We'll be back with more, including softball head coach Jin Sewell. This is Inside Saluki Athletics, presented by Poly Eyes of Carbondale. Here to close out Inside Saluki Athletics today, presented by Poly Eyes of Carbondale, is none other than our weekly segment with Saluki Softball head coach Jin Sewell. Coach Sewell, appreciate the time. You staying warm?
I'm trying. I'm going to wear this coat all day long, so this is my outfit for a while.
It is just crazy this year. It seems like the cold has really been more colder, and then, of course, obviously the snow moving in here over the next day or so. No doubt going to, I'm sure, make it a challenge for your group to try to do anything outside here before you hit the road again.
Yeah, it's back to the indoor, but we had a great practice last night, so I appreciate the hard work. It's not always easy to go back in there. So.
Oh, no question. Coach, I know the weekend was nowhere where you want it from a results standpoint. Just right now, what's been the main talking points with your group in terms of just obviously the wins not quite being there, but also knowing the schedule is tough too, but knowing that the schedule's tough, you've had some great opportunities in these games as well.
Yeah, I think we've continued. I mean, I think we're frustrated in a good way. I know that sounds odd, but, you can get frustrated and kind of start to really nag at each other and pick at each other, but I think we're frustrated in a good way. Kids wanting to get the extra time in, the extra work, the extra film and stuff like that. So I do appreciate that. And I think our culture can really withstand, some L's sometimes, and try to get better from that. I mean, we talked about it. It's going to be messy right now. It's going to feel messy. Nobody's trying to screw it up. I think we're trying a little hard sometimes, a little too hard instead of, letting it come to us. And that's going to happen with teams, especially coming off a year like last year, to coming off a very tough early schedule this year. And I think that's why we talked about the schedule from the very beginning in the fall. And we talked about, hey, this is going to be really hard, and we have to do the hard part. And I know you're not seeing the results right now, but, we're trying to build and get some results later.
Look, you have the experience level, right? You've been around, where there's years where you've gone against really difficult schedules before. And the point is, if you stick with it and you trust the culture that you've built, it's going to ultimately pay off. how are your daily conversations with your group to just make sure that, right now it can be hard because this isn't what the program's used to.
Right.
But to get them to see, hey, there's going to be some light here. We just need you to trust. I know it's cliche, but trust the process. Do what we have taught you from the standpoint of the culture standpoint from day one.
Yeah, and that's the conversation we had last night, and we've continued to practice really well. Some teams could get really, like we talked about, frustrated and just kind of quit on it. But I think kids have actually been kind of fired up to do more, and that's a good sign that we're going to be okay. If we just didn't like each other or didn't appreciate each other, we could really start in on in terms of like especially team environments. But people are showing up early, staying late, asking for extra, and I appreciate that. They want to see the film. I think they know we're a couple plays away. It's just like not clicking, and it starts to feel like the universe has kind of got a voodoo doll and it's poking you in the side too much. Because some of the things we did this weekend were just freakish things. I mean, knocking a home run out by accident in a 30-mile-an-hour wind is just, I've seen it done one other time in my career, and nobody means to mess it up, but you start to try too hard and kind of over try, and I think that's where we're at a little bit. But we try to talk about the good things, and we try to go back to practice and fix some of the things the best we can inside.
Look, as you kind of just described, going through obviously those processes, and one of the areas that you preach about with your team all the time, right? You just don't want to beat yourselves. Yeah. I know clearly, obviously, 10 under and runs is one of those things that just make you want to pull everything out and be so frustrated. What do you tell your group after a day like that? And in terms of definitely trying to get them to understand that the margin is really small.
Right.
And if you just a few plays away from, just games really flipping.
Yeah, and I don't even know that we have to tell them. We definitely don't avoid it as a topic. I think we've always been one of those clubs that is like, hey, let's talk about it. Let's get it out there and not avoid what we're trying to fix. I think what maybe the issue is right now is we can't get back to fix and really work on the exact things that we want to clean up. So we're kind of working around it in terms of like playing in that bigger outfield, much like the Power Fours play, and we have a much smaller situation at Charlotte West, taking ground balls, something as simple as like just feeling the chemistry between you and the person standing next to you. So we're trying to play our way through it and then sort of practice a little bit the best we can do during the week. But I think they've embraced it. Nobody's really backed down. We're not in tears at the end of the day. So, I really like, you always want to see how you're going to show up on a Monday. You're supposed to have had Monday off. And we show up on a Monday, we get Sunday off, and everybody was calling in like, hey, I'll be there early. I want to see what we're doing, and I appreciate that. So.
What do you believe is leading this team, and outside of just, look, that's the culture of Saluki Softball, and it's been that way for a long time and will be, but what do you believe from what you see every day has allowed the team to be that way, is what you're describing? Whether it's where you want to give credit to a few of the leaders or not, but where do you believe that's coming from and why this team's continuing to be that way?
Yeah, it really comes from the assistant coaches and then the captains and just that relationship piece. If you don't have a great relationship with your team, then the things that may go wrong may not filter to the top, and then we don't know about them, and then we can't address them. But our captains take care of so much, and we talk about that a lot. Like, the locker room is precious to us. Like, we don't take our issues outside, and we deal with them in-house. And our issues are minute compared to, I think, what other teams deal with. But it's little things like, hey, I know you're frustrated. Don't pop off like that. We're all trying to win here, and it gets dealt with, and people can say, I'm sorry, and we move on, and people will get frustrated. This is an extremely competitive situation we're in. We do have very high expectations, but things like little things that could fester and blister in a program, our captains deal with. And even, we had captains that made mistakes, and we talked about it in practice. Hey, we've all made a mistake. I've made a mistake. You made a mistake. We all have made them. And there's nobody out here that's played perfect softball. So if we can be accountable to that and then come back and and work on those things, we're going to be much better in a couple weeks. So.
To build off of that, it's one of the areas that we talked about a ton on the basketball side early, especially with the tough schedule that Coach Nagy and his group had, was there was no fool's gold. Either way, the things you were doing well because of who you were playing, you're really good at that. You're finding out that can be a strength of this team. And the things that you're not doing well, you're like, this isn't fool's gold either. Like, we're finding out when you go up against really good teams, this is what you're going to have to improve at. Do you feel that way with your group, that there's a lot of great examples here saying, look, we know what we can do well, and we clearly know, hey, this is where we got to improve to get to where we want to go?
Well, and that's the thing. In years past, we've sort of skated through some of those issues with maybe a lighter schedule and been able to say, oh, yeah, and then gotten our butt bit in postseason with it. Things like in conference tournaments or maybe getaway days on Sundays where we're tired. I think we're learning some tough lessons now that we can use in April and May. And that doesn't feel good right now, and we know that. But it will, when you go to a postseason situation, you're going to say, hey, I went through that 3 weeks. I was there. I remember what this feels like and what we've got to execute. I think the things that we're not doing well, we're going to do well once we settle in a little bit and can practice those things every day. But I always appreciate a club from the top down and from the bottom up that doesn't make any excuses. Like, we're not going to talk about the weather. I told him we're not going to talk about the weather. We're not going to talk about the travel. We're not going to talk about the game schedule that we got. You have to be tough at this level, and especially at a mid-major, you have to. It's like I compare it to playing like JUCO baseball. I think if you've been through JUCO baseball, you can survive anything. Like, you can build your own raft and go from continent to continent after you've survived JUCO baseball. And those guys come out tougher than ever, and that's why scouts go and get them, because they're great guys and they have great mentality. I think that's kind of what we're going through right now, this sort of road. We don't know our schedule. We don't know the weather. We can't practice the way we want to. So the only choice is to toughen up and get better.
Well, of course, this weekend you'll head down to San Marcos for that tournament. I know it's going to be a great one. Texas State, of course, familiar from a year ago. Get Kansas twice, get Creighton twice. So, again, going to be another really solid weekend of tremendous opportunity for your group.
Yeah, I think, again, like Texas State is right in the boat with us. They lost their number one. So they're trying to figure, their schedule out. Creighton, I think, is going to be out this weekend. I think they're staying home. Kansas has flown all over the country trying to get games in their situation. Their snow is looking like 12 to 18 inches. I'm not even convinced they'll come home. And we're going to try to get some teams down there from some other tournaments that are now falling apart. So once again, I would strongly encourage you just log on each day and listen to Trude, and you may not know what game is about to happen. But I told our kids this is another weekend. Like, we're going to go down there, and I have no idea what's about to happen. But when you put that uniform on, it's go time.
Coach, before I let you go and get you on your way, I know Saluki Nation really hurting with the passing of longtime coach, baseball coach here, Itchy Jones. And, yes, everyone obviously knows what he did for baseball, but he was just such a really main fixture here at SIU. Even from a softball angle, I know he was a guy that you guys really marveled at as well.
Yeah, and I got to meet Itchy a couple times through Carrie, and just a profound guy. I mean, a very small-statured man with a big impact. I had 2 or 3 phone calls, one from Missouri, one from the West Coast, one from the East Coast, and they were softball coaches saying, hey, heard about Itchy, just want to express our, just loved him, loved the family, loved what he meant for, a program like ours and for baseball and for all of athletics. But I thought that was really cool that he's not only affected baseball, but he's affected softball. Yeah. And when you say that name, you get that sort of response everywhere you go. So just a great guy and very tender-hearted for our sport, but obviously a guy who could coach baseball, but could coach live too. So.
Coach, really appreciate the time. Good luck this weekend. I know there'd be no better way to honor Itch, as we talked about with Coach Rose this weekend, and just Saluki wins all the way around.
That's right.
A tremendous effort this weekend. Safe travels to you, Coach Sewell. Appreciate the time.
Thank you.
Once again, that was head coach Jen Sewell. And again, our thoughts continue to be with Coach Jones's family, as I know it's been a tough 24 hours for them, but the love is no doubt being felt throughout Saluki Nation. So for everybody who took part in Inside Saluki Athletics, presented by Poly Eyes of Carbondale today, we say thank you. We will talk to you again next Tuesday.
This has been Inside Saluki Athletics, presented by Poly Eyes of Carbondale. The preceding has been a Learfield presentation on the Saluki Sports Network.